Warhammer 2 is one massive game, which has a long list of available lords to play. Currently, if you own all of the DLCs that have been released, there are 66 lords to choose from, most with their own starting positions, providing a variety of gameplay for all of the factions. There are, however, a number of lords that share their starting positions with others from their faction, reducing the variety and options for interaction with other races. So today, we will take a look at the current starting locations for the lords in every faction, and in the cases where we have a tight cluster of lords sharing the same starting position, we will look at the possible alternative starts that the lord could have. We start our journey with the Beastmen. They currently have 3 lords with various starting positions about the map. We have Khazrak One-Eye in the Southern Realms, Malagor beginning his journey in the Southern Badlands, and Morgur the Shadowgrave starting in Nordland. This provides them with interactions with a number of different foes, and can make their campaign battles quite interesting. It's just a shame that the Beastmen themselves are in such bad shape at the moment. Let's hope we get the Beastmen in the upcoming Lord Pack to change that. We'll move on to the second faction, which is the Honourable Rulers of Bretonnia, who have 4 lords, with 3 located in Bretonnia and the 4th fighting in the Desert Sands. We have Luon Leoncoeur starting in Couronne, Alberic in Bordelot, and the Fey Enchantress in Carcassonne. Repance is off further south in the coast of Araby. While 3 of the lords find themselves with fairly close starting positions, I don't feel there is a great need to move any of them from their current starts. I just hope that any future Bretonnian lords we might get, which will undoubtedly be from FLC, will have more varied starting locations. Let's move on to the Dark Elves. They currently received their 6th legendary lord with Rakarth just a few days ago, an FLC that took the community by surprise, as it was widely believed that the Dark Elves would be one of the races in Warhammer 2's final Lord Pack. We have Malekith in Nagorond, Morathi in the Titan Peaks just north of Lustria. We find Crone Hellebron on the coast of the Sea of Malice, Lokir Felhart just off the eastern coast of Lustria, and Malice Darkblade in the Dragon Isles. Rakath, who was recently added, finds himself quite isolated on the island of Albion. This gives us a pretty good spread across the map, although Malekith and Crone Hellebron do find themselves just one province away from one another. Are they close enough that we need to move one of the lords? I'd say not at this stage, but if the opportunity arises to move one of them when the new Mortal Empires map is released in Game 3, it may well be worth considering. Next, we have the Dwarves, one of my favourite races in the game. I just loved the way the stunties held their grudges. They currently have 4 lords spread across the old world. There is Thorgrim Grudgebearer in Karaz Akarak in the World's Edge Mountains, Grombrindal sharing that same starting position, Belagar Ironhammer, who finds himself in Karak Izor just to the east of Athel Loren, and Ungrim Ironfist, located in Karakudrin at the northern end of the World's Edge Mountains. Those starting positions are pretty good, except for Grombrindal, who really deserves a unique starting position out of the shadow of Thorgrim. So what possible locations are there that we could move Grombrindal to? Well, we could place him in any one of a number of dwarf holds across the map. We have options such as Cracker Drak in the far north, which would pit him against Throt in Hellpit and the Troll King Throg in the lands of Norsca. It would also place him right in the path of the inevitable Chaos Invasion. At the opposite end of the map, there is the hold of Karak Zorn. This would make for a different campaign, as the enemies would be mostly Tomb Kings, which the dwarves don't often face, along with the threat of Quick Headtaker to the north and possibly Krokgar to the east. Another possible hold, which could even see him added to the Vortex campaign if we were very lucky, could be the remote dwarf hold in the spine of Sotek. This would see him fighting Lord Skrolk, possibly some Lizardmen, and perhaps even Lokier Felhart and Luther Harkon on the eastern coast of Lustria. There is of course one character of immensely evil proportions that Grombrindal has beef with. And it would be fantastic to have the White Dwarf start in a position that could pit him against this foe. That is Malekith, who many centuries ago was a friend to the Dwarves, and best buddies with the legendary High King Snorri Whitebeard. They fought many battles side by side, settling numerous grudges, and on his deathbed, Snorri made Malekith swear that the Dwarves and Elves would remain friends forever. Malekith pledged that he would safeguard the relationship between their peoples, only to betray that oath when he sparked the War of the Beard by attacking several dwarf holds. Some believe that Grombrindal is in fact Snorri Whitebeard, come back from the dead to exact revenge upon Malekith for his breaking of that sacred oath. This would be a fantastic quest chain for Grombrindal to have in the Mortal Empires, and we could have him start in some lost dwarf hold not too far from Naggaroth. In the 8th edition Dwarf Army book, there are a couple of maps that show the holds that the dwarfs built across their empire, and one that I think would be perfect is Kraka Ornsmotek, which is located in the Hellspire Mountains on the western edge of Norsca. From this location, Grombrindal could cross the Sea of Chaos, battling Norskins and Dark Elves, to reach his ultimate goal of Naggarond, to face off against the Oathbreaker Malekith. This would require the addition of a new settlement in the Hellspire Mountains, but I think that such a change would breathe new life into Grombrindal's campaign, and would also give the Norskins a new challenge. Up next, we have the Empire, which has 4 lords to choose from. We have the Emperor Karl Franz in Altdorf. Volkmar the Grim also has the starting position. Then we find Balthasar Gelt to the south in Solland, and finally there is Marcus Wolfhart on an expedition in the creeping jungle of Lustria. Their starting positions are reasonable, but we run into the same issue here as we do with the Dwarves. We have 2 lords starting from exactly the same location. To give the Empire a little more variety, and that glorious moustache some room to breathe, I would propose that we move Volkmar from the start in Altdorf up north into the Brass Keep. It's a site that has been occupied by Chaos on numerous occasions, and his move there could be based on finding a clue in one of his ancient tomes, to a weapon or artifact that could sway the odds in the Empire's favour, in their eternal battle against the forces of Chaos. This artifact could be buried deep within the old ruins of the keep, and Volkmar has to locate it as he prepares for the coming conflict. This would pit him against Throt, the Norskins, and start him closer to the Chaos invasion, but would not take him too far from the lands of Sylvania, so the player can still choose to smite the undead when the urge arises. Let's move on to the Greenskins, who currently have 5 lords. Grimgor can be found in the eastern Badlands. Skarsnik starts in the southern part of the Grey Mountains. Wurzag is dancing away the days in the western Badlands, while Grom occupies massive Orkle in the heart of Bretonnia. And of course, we have Azag enjoying his new start in the northern World's Edge Mountains, which he received in the Greenskins Old World update. I think since their update, the starting positions are very good, and even though Grom and Skarsnik start quite close to one another, they have very different focuses in their campaigns. Now, let's take a look at the High Elves, who have a wonderful variety of starting locations. There is Tyrion in Lothern. His brother Teclis can be found just off the coast of Lustria in the Volcanic Isles. Alariel resides in the heart of Ulthuan in the Gaian Vale. Alithanar is to the west on the Black Coast, in the perfect position to strike at the heart of Dark Elf territory. Eltharion can be found out of his man cave in the southern Badlands, and Imric is playing hide and seek with his dragons in the fortress of Vorag in the Darklands. all in all, some great locations with plenty of different races to fight. Okay, enough about those pointy ears. Let's move on to the Guardians of Lustria, the Lizardmen, who currently have 6 legendary lords spread across the map. In northern Lustria, we can find Lord Mazdamundi, holding back the Dark Elves and Skegi. In the Kingdom of Beasts, we have Kroq-Gar. Tehenuin can be found in the southeastern region of Lustria, starting in the city of Olotl. Tic-Tac-Toe starts in the southern deserts of Araby. Nakai can be found, if you look hard enough, wandering wherever he pleases after departing Albion. You try telling a 10-foot crocodile and his mates where they can and can't go. Finally, there is Gorok in the southern great jungle of Lustria, cozy neighbours with Tehenuin, in one of the most congested areas of the map. Seriously, you can't swing a cat there without hitting Skaven, Dark Elves, High Elves or Vampires. The various starting positions for the Lizardmen pit them against a variety of foes, and I think they are in great shape. I do wonder though if moving either Gorok or Tehenuin to the eastern side of Lustria in the jungles of the Green Mists region might benefit them. Now, let's take a look at the Norskins, who have 2 legendary lords, both situated in the far north in the frozen wastes. Wulfric can be found in the Ice Drake Fjord, just off the Sea of Claws, and Throg resides in the mountains of Hell. They have a decent distance between them and focus on different enemies as they move south, so I don't see any need for any changes with them. So let's quickly move on to the Skaven, who, much like the other Game 2 races, have a good variety of starting locations. We see Quig Headtaker starting in the Charnel Valley. Lord Skrulk can be found across the map, spreading his plagues in the Headhunter's jungle in the south of Lustria. Tretch Craventail can be found surrounded by Dark Elves on the Clawed Coast, no doubt wondering how he got himself in such a sticky situation. Icaclaw is overseeing his mad scientists in Skavenblight to the south of Bretonnia. We find Clan Eshin and Deathmaster Snickich in the far east of the Darklands, in what is an increasingly busy area. And finally, there is Throt the Unclean, hiding out in Hellpit, mutating monsters, and avoiding soap of any description. They have so many different possible adversaries in all corners of the map, and don't really need any changes, though giving Tretch Craventail an option to confederate the Skaven clan in Crookback Mountain would be a most welcome addition. Next, we move on to the ancient Tomb Kings, whose looks long ago withered away much like their once mighty empire. Settra, he who does not serve, as he constantly reminds everyone in his campaign, starts in the lands of the dead. Grand Hierophant Katep can be found right on the western edge of the map in the Black Spine Mountains, spending his exile overlooking the Great Void, pondering what happened to the western coast of Naggaroth and Lustria. High Queen Khalida is in the Devil's Backbone, with some prime real estate overlooking the Bitter Sea, and finally Arkan the Black is in the Land of Assassins. The Tomb Kings have a good variety from their starting positions, so no need to make any changes, though I sincerely hope we get more Tomb Kings in Game 3. On to the Vampire Coast, who have 4 lords, all in coastal settlements. The first is Luther Harkon, on the eastern edge of Lustria, in the aptly named Vampire Coast. Then we find Count Noctilus in one of the most unique starting positions of the game, in the Galleon's Graveyard. He can seriously go anywhere he pleases from that position. Aranessa Saltspite can be found in Sartosa, just south of Bretonnia, and Sarlostra Diafin is on the coast of the Sea of Serpents, in northern Lustria, practicing her singing and driving the locals mad. Much like most factions, the vampire counts have a good variety of starting positions. Now, time for the vampire counts, who have 5 lords across 3 regions in the Old World. There are Manfred von Karstein and Helmund Gorst, both starting in eastern Sylvania. I believe that Helmund Gorst lives in Manfred's basement. Vlad and Isabella von Karstein find themselves in western Sylvania, and Heinrich Kemmler has the most unique starting position in the northern end of the Grey Mountains. The vampire counts are most certainly the most tightly packed of any of the factions in the game, and I think they are in need of some adjustments to their starting locations. Helmund Gorst should be let out of the basement. My God, the poor man needs some sunlight. But the question is, where could he move to? He is a minor character in the Warhammer world, not really worthy of his own faction, and his lore is so tightly tied to Manfred's that it's hard to have him move too far away. There is the possibility that he could be moved a little further north into the damned city of Mordheim, though that would not see his campaign change much, and he would find himself fighting the same foes. A tricky one to relocate. Where would you put him? Or would you not even bother moving him at all? Onto the other pair of lords that find themselves starting in the same location, Vlad and Isabella von Karstein. This is one instance where it makes perfect sense for them to be together, as they have been inseparable in death. I do wonder though, if Isabella could be reworked as a legendary hero exclusive to Vlad's campaign. I believe she was added to the game as an FLC, so it shouldn't ruffle too many feathers. The great downside would be losing a legendary lord from the Vampire Counts roster, but with so many other undead characters in the old world yet to be added, the change could be made when we next receive one of them. We have two factions left to look at. Firstly, there are the Warriors of Chaos, who have 3 legendary lords, all starting in the Chaos Wastes in the far north of the map. There's Archaon the Everchosen, Kolex Sun-Eater and his hefty hammer, and Sigvald the Magnificent, who can be a deadly warrior when he stops looking in the mirror. It would be nice if at least one of these guys were moved to start their invasion from another spot in the far north, perhaps across the map in Naggaroth, so the Dark Elves could have them over for tea. We will quickly move on to our last race, the tree-loving hippies of Athel Loren. The Wood Elves now have 4 lords after their update with the Twisted in the Twilight. We have the Mel Gibson impersonator, Orion, chilling out in the south of Athel Loren. Then there is Durthu, who was recently knocked from the top spot as most vicious plant of the old world, putting down roots in Athel Loren's north. We find the other 2 legendary lords for the Wood Elves a little farther afield, with Dryker, the Screaming Tree, taking on all comers in the Griffin Wood in the heart of the Empire, and the Sisters of Twilight starting across the map in the Witchwood, surrounded by Beastmen, Dark Elves and Skaven. Since their update, they are in a great position, especially when you consider their ability to teleport across the map between the sacred woodlands, exposing them to all sorts of adversaries. Well, there we have the starting positions for all 66 lords, and we can look forward to at least 3 more in the upcoming Lord Pack. Who they will be and where they will start are surely soon to be revealed. Let's just hope that some of the more sparsely populated areas of the map are used for their starting locations, and that they add more variety to their faction's list of enemies. What are your thoughts on the current starting positions of the lords in the game? Given the power, who would you move and where would you put them? Well, time to wrap up. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. As always, I'd like to end with a shout out to my patrons, with a special thanks to Hot Apple Pie for their continued support. I'm Grey Tiger, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.